Ever wonder how people can die in the silliest ways? From bizarre accidents to laughable misadventures, these real-life stories are so strange, you won't believe they actually happened. In this video, we're diving into the most ridiculous, absurd deaths you've ever heard of. Prepare yourself for a wild ride of absurdity and shock with 1 hour of people who died in extremely silly ways. A cold night in 2004, and the world was under a global health crisis. Taiwan, like many countries, was battling severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS, a deadly virus that had claimed hundreds of lives. Amidst this, a 45-year-old woman, terrified of getting sick, took drastic measures. She believed that soaking in a bathtub filled with 40.5% ethanol would protect her from the virus. Unfortunately, her attempt to shield herself had fatal consequences. Around 11 p.m., the woman filled her bathtub with ethanol and got in, thinking it would act as a barrier against SARS. Her family, unaware of her actions, went about their night. By the next morning, they found her in the tub, lifeless. It was 11 a.m., and it was already too late. At first glance, there seemed to be nothing unusual about her death. Her head was above the ethanol, and there were no signs of trauma or drowning. Investigators found no evidence of drugs, and her stomach was empty, ruling out alcohol ingestion. Yet her blood alcohol concentration, or BAC, was an alarming 1.35%. To put it in perspective, a BAC of 0.4% can be lethal. So how did she end up with such a high BAC without drinking? The answer was skin absorption. Normally, the skin doesn't absorb enough alcohol to cause harm. But in this case, the woman had been immersed in the ethanol for nearly 12 hours. Over time, her body absorbed a significant amount of alcohol through her skin. On top of that, she likely inhaled alcohol vapors, speeding up the process. As her BAC rose, the alcohol began affecting her central nervous system. By the time her BAC reached 0.1% to 0.2%, she was likely disoriented and unable to move. She probably couldn't climb out of the bathtub, leaving her trapped as her body continued to absorb more alcohol. Eventually, her BAC reached the fatal level of 1.35%. When her family found her, there was nothing they could do. This rare case stunned the medical community. Alcohol poisoning through skin absorption is almost unheard of in adults. However, the woman's extended exposure to ethanol and her decision to use such a high concentration created a dangerous situation. Researchers who examined the case estimated she absorbed about 1.5 liters of ethanol, enough to kill her. The SARS outbreak triggered widespread fear, leading people to take extreme measures to protect themselves. In Taiwan, over 660 cases of SARS have been reported, and 73 people have died. The woman, like many others, was caught up in the panic, but her desperate attempt to avoid infection ended in tragedy. Sadly, this case is not unique. During times of crisis, people often resort to dangerous methods out of fear. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, some people ingested or injected harmful substances in an attempt to protect themselves from the virus. Following the woman's death, public health officials urged the public to avoid unverified remedies. The World Health Organization, WHO, clarified that while alcohol-based hand sanitizers effectively kill germs, the amount of alcohol absorbed through the skin during regular use is safe. They warned against bathing in alcohol or using it in unsafe ways. This case reminds us of the dangers of misinformation and panic. In her attempt to protect herself from SARS, the woman inadvertently put herself at even greater risk. Her death was a tragic, preventable outcome, underscoring the importance of following reliable, science-backed advice during health crises. It was October 23, 2017, in the small coastal village of Kuala Sanglang, northern Malaysia. The Nine Emperor Gods Festival, a major Taoist celebration, was in full swing, and crowds gathered to witness various rituals, including one performed by Lim Ba, a famous Taoist medium. Known for his extreme physical endurance, Lim, who was 68 years old, had become a local legend through his ritual known as human steaming. In this act, he would sit inside a large metal wok and endure being steamed alive, showcasing his spiritual strength. Lim had captivated his followers with this dangerous ritual for over a decade. Many saw it as a powerful symbol of faith, and it had drawn crowds to witness Lim's perceived invulnerability. However, his family was deeply concerned. Lim had undergone heart surgery the previous year, and his health had been in decline. His son Kang Huai and daughter Wei Ling had pleaded with him to stop. He was on medication for hypertension and hadn't been feeling well leading up to the event. Despite their warnings, Lim insisted on going through with the performance. At 10 p.m., Lim took his usual position in the large wok. Sitting in a lotus pose, he clasped his hands in prayer, and a massive steel lid was placed over the top. The fire underneath began to heat the wok, and food items like corn, rice, and buns were steamed alongside him. It was both a religious ritual and entertainment to the audience as they watched the steam rise from the wok. Everything appeared normal initially, with Lim sitting calmly inside as he had done many times before. His previous record for enduring this was 75 minutes, and no one expected anything different this time. However, after 30 minutes, strange noises were heard from within the wok. What began as soft sounds soon became frantic banging. Lim, once calm, was now in distress. Panic spread through the crowd as Lim's son and others rushed to lift the lid. When the lid was finally removed, Lim was found unconscious with severe burns covering his face, hands, and body. He had gone into cardiac arrest, and although efforts were made to revive him, they were unsuccessful. Lim was pronounced dead at the scene, and the cause of death was determined to be a heart attack worsened by the burns he suffered. The news of Lim's death shocked the local community, where he had long been regarded as a spiritual leader who appeared almost invincible. However, his family had always feared this day would come. His son had expressed that they had repeatedly urged him to stop, knowing the risks, especially after his surgery. His daughter Wei Ling noted that although he cherished the admiration of his followers, the family constantly worried about his safety. Following Lim's death, the temple canceled all further performances out of respect. Taoist officials distanced themselves from the ritual, with some explaining that it wasn't part of mainstream Taoist practice, but rather a fa shu, a magic-like performance that tested physical endurance. Tan Ho Kio, president of the Federation of Taoist Associations of Malaysia, emphasized that while such feats could attract believers, they were dangerous and not recommended. Lim's death brought attention to the risks of extreme rituals. Malaysia, known for its religious diversity, has a long history of endurance-based religious acts. Still, this incident underscored the potential danger of pushing the body beyond its limits, even in the name of faith. For Lim's family, the grief was overwhelming. They had always been aware of the risks, but his devotion to his followers and belief in his spiritual strength had always outweighed their concerns. Wei Ling noted that he had been performing these rituals for so long that they never imagined it would end this way. In the end, many wondered why Lim continued the ritual despite his deteriorating health. Having undergone heart surgery and being on medication for hypertension, it was clear that his body was no longer capable of handling such extreme conditions. Nonetheless, his belief in the ritual's power and his determination to continue ultimately proved to be too much for his weakening body to endure, leading to his untimely collapse. Sam Ballard was a lively 19-year-old rugby player from Sydney, Australia, full of promise and enthusiasm. One weekend in 2010, he was hanging out at his friend Jimmy Galvin's house, enjoying a get-together that included a bit of red wine tasting, when Sam made a decision that would change his life. What was it? While having fun and chilling, a garden slug crawled before them, setting the stage for a life-changing moment. In a bid to act mature and possibly influenced by the wine, Sam dared his friends that he could eat the slug. Without giving it much thought, he went ahead and did just that. Initially, everything seemed all good, and the friends continued their evening. However, a few days later, Sam started feeling unwell, complaining of severe leg pain followed by vomiting and dizziness. Concerned by his condition, which was only getting worse, his mother, Katie, rushed him to the hospital. She was very anxious, fearing that her son might be suffering from multiple sclerosis, a condition that affected his father. But the doctors quickly ruled that out. It was then that Sam mentioned he had eaten a slug. However, his mother initially dismissed the idea, believing that couldn't be the cause of his illness. Sadly, she was mistaken. Sam had become terribly ill from that seemingly harmless dare. The slug Sam ate was carrying rat lungworm disease, a serious infection caused by a parasitic worm that usually lives in rodents but can be transferred to slugs and snails if they consume rodent feces. This parasite is particularly menacing because once eaten by humans, it enters through the intestinal lining, going to vital organs like the liver and lungs, before finally reaching the central nervous system. Typically, rat lungworm disease might cause mild symptoms, but most people recover quickly. Unfortunately for Sam, his case was serious. The parasites invaded his brain and spinal cord, leading to eosinophilic meningoencephalitis. The seriousness of the infection put him into a coma for 420 days and left him with significant brain damage. When Sam woke up, he was already bound to a wheelchair, relying on a feeding tube, and unable to move his limbs freely. Reflecting on her son's condition, Katie Ballard recalled how she had thought of him as invincible. She remembered Sam as a lively and sometimes mischievous young man, never imagining that he could be struck down so greatly by a simple act of youthful exuberance. Sure reminds us of the unexpected ways life can change in an instant. Katie Ballard shared her feelings on Facebook, describing her son Sam as still the cheeky, laughter-filled young man he was before the accident. Yet she also admitted to feeling devastated, acknowledging that the incident had changed their lives forever. She thought about the randomness of the tragedy, noting that no one could have predicted that such an insignificant and trivial event would cause such a horrific tragedy. Initially, Katie held on to the hope that Sam might one day walk and talk again. However, as time passed, this hope dimmed because of the harsh realities of his condition. Sam's paralysis required him to have 24-hour care every day of the week. He faced frequent seizures, needed help with basic functions like using the bathroom, and could not regulate his body temperature on his own. After enduring 3 long years in the hospital, he was finally able to go home, though he remained dependent on a motorized wheelchair for his movement. In the wake of Sam Ballard's tragic incident, online communities had mixed reactions. Some trolls quickly pointed fingers, suggesting that Sam's friends should bear the financial burden of his care. However, Katie Ballard, Sam's mother, held no such resentment. She understood that they were just teenagers being teenagers, caught in an unforeseen calamity. Guess they too must have learned from the incident. Despite the challenges, Sam's friends stood by him, proving their loyalty and friendship. They regularly visited, spending time watching TV shows and rugby matches with him, maintaining some normalcy in his life. When Katie would step out of the room, they would even help Sam taste a bit of beer, gently pouring a little onto his lips, a small gesture that meant the world to Sam. This group, affectionately dubbed Team Ballard, rallied together to raise funds for his care. They managed to gather a significant amount, but continuous lifelong care costs were overwhelming. And it really wasn't easy for his mom, too. In 2016, a ray of hope emerged when Sam became eligible for a substantial $492,000 care package from the National Disability Insurance Scheme, or NDIS, thanks to an application filed by his mother. This financial assistance helped cover some of Sam's extensive medical needs. Tragically, after battling health complications for 8 years, Sam passed away in November 2018 at Hornsby Hospital in Australia, surrounded by his family and close friends. His final words to his mother, filled with love, were, "I love you." These words echoed the deep bond and affection that defined Sam's relationships with those closest to him. Jennifer Strange was a 28-year-old mother of 3 from Rancho Cordova, California. She had entered a radio station's unique contest in January 2007. The competition, dubbed Hold Your Wee for a Wee, challenged contestants to drink as much water as possible without going to the restroom, with a Nintendo Wii video game console as the grand prize. Like her fellow contestants, Jennifer was drawn to the competition, hoping to win the prize for her family. But her family got something else. Jennifer consumed an alarming amount of water during the contest, nearly 2 gallons within about 3 hours. The contest started with smaller water bottles distributed every 15 minutes. Still, as the competition advanced and participants dropped out, the remaining contestants, including Jennifer, were given larger quantities of water to consume. Despite suffering from severe headaches and visible discomfort, Jennifer's struggles were not taken seriously by the radio hosts. They even made light of her symptoms, joking about her visibly swollen stomach and dismissing her complaints as humorous. Jennifer managed to secure second place, earning a pair of concert tickets, but the victory was short-lived. Feeling unwell, she called in sick at work and went home. Sadly, just hours after the contest ended, Jennifer was found dead in her bathroom by her mother. The light-hearted contest she had entered with hopes of a simple prize had led to a devastating outcome. After the sad death of Jennifer Strange, her family took legal action against Entercom, the parent company of the radio station that hosted the water drinking contest. Her husband, Billy Strange, hoped that the lawsuit would serve as a caution to other companies that engage with the public. Ultimately, the jury awarded the family $16.5 million in compensation. This verdict was intended to send a strong message about the responsibilities of corporations in ensuring the safety of their activities. In an interview with Good Morning America, Billy expressed his grief and frustration, stating that his wife's death from water toxicity was entirely preventable. He also added that the radio station had been warned about the dangers of such contests months before the sad event. Despite these warnings, the competition proceeded without adequate safety measures in place. During the court proceedings, the defense argued that Jennifer should have recognized the risks of consuming excessive amounts of water. However, Billy's attorney, Roger Dreyer, countered this by claiming that Jennifer acted as any reasonable person would under those circumstances, driven by the incentive of winning a prize without a clear understanding of the potential health risks. During the water drinking contest, concerns were raised not just internally, but also by the public. Listeners like Eva Brooks called into the show, cautioning the hosts about the serious risks of consuming large quantities of water. Eva specifically warned that it could lead to water intoxication, which might be fatal. Despite these warnings, the disc jockeys acknowledged the risks but dismissed them, pointing out that contestants had signed release forms. Thus, the station couldn't be held responsible. Roger Dreyer also highlighted a significant oversight during the trial. He pointed out that even after receiving calls from concerned individuals, including a nurse who specifically warned about the dangers, the DJs failed to communicate these risks to the contestants. In a concerning turn of events, the radio station even increased the amount of water the participants had to drink as the contest progressed. An initial autopsy confirmed that Jennifer's death was caused by water intoxication, leading to a condition known as hyponatremia. Hyponatremia happens when excessive water intake dilutes the sodium in the bloodstream, causing cells to swell. In severe cases, it can lead to brain swelling, seizures, and death. You don't want to imagine. The jury found the radio station culpable for negligence for not taking adequate safety measures and failing to properly inform the participants of the grave risks associated with the contest. In 2017, the radio station shut down. Natasha Harris was a 30-year-old mother of 8 from Invercargill, New Zealand. Natasha had a unique habit. She loved Coca-Cola so much that she would drink 8 to 10 liters daily. One morning in February 2010, as her partner Chris Hodgkinson was helping their kids get ready for school, something alarming happened. Natasha suddenly collapsed against a wall. Chris quickly called for help and tried to revive her with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but it was too late. Tragically, Natasha suffered a heart attack, which doctors linked to her massive daily intake of Coca-Cola. Dr. Dan Mornan, a pathologist, spoke at an investigation and shared some crucial details about Natasha Harris's health. He explained that Natasha likely had hypokalemia, which means she had low potassium levels. Dr. Mornan believed this was caused by her drinking too much Coca-Cola and not eating well overall. He also mentioned that the high levels of caffeine in Coca-Cola could have played a role in her tragic death. During the investigation, Natasha's partner Chris shared more about her daily habits. He testified that she would drink between 8 and 10 liters of Coke daily, which is about 2.1 to 2.6 gallons. According to Chris, Coca-Cola was a constant presence in Natasha's life. She would start her day with a Coke right beside her bed and end it with another Coke before going to sleep. Chris described her as being addicted to Coke, meaning she couldn't stop drinking it even if she tried. Chris shared more details about Natasha's lifestyle, revealing that she didn't eat much and smoked about 30 cigarettes a day. In the months leading up to her death, he noticed that Natasha was struggling with high blood pressure and often felt tired. Whenever she couldn't have her Coca-Cola, Natasha would suffer from headaches and mood swings, clear signs of withdrawal. Her intense craving for Coca-Cola led to severe health problems, including tooth decay so bad that she had to have teeth removed, and likely heart issues because of all the sugar and caffeine she consumed. Despite these serious health warnings, Natasha and her family didn't fully grasp how dangerous her Coca-Cola addiction was until it was too late. The coroner, David Crerar, said that Natasha's excessive Coca-Cola consumption played a significant role in her untimely death. He pointed out that her daily routine of drinking Coca-Cola led to her consuming over 2.2 pounds of sugar and nearly 1 gram of caffeine each day. These alarming amounts contributed to severe health issues like heart rhythm problems and low potassium levels, which ultimately led to her death. The coroner suggested that health authorities should reduce the caffeine limits in soft drinks or add clearer warning labels to help prevent such incidents. Coca-Cola responded to the coroner's findings by expressing disappointment that their product was singled out. They argue that consuming any food or drink in extreme amounts, even something as harmless as water, can cause health issues if not balanced with a proper diet. In all, it wasn't about a battle between Coca-Cola and the coroner. Still, it was about a mother and wife who had lost her life due to her own unchecked consumption of caffeine. January 1996, Mark Gleason, a 26-year-old man from Headley Down in Hampshire, England, lost his life in an unusual and preventable way. His death stemmed from a desperate attempt to stop his loud snoring, a condition that had grown increasingly disruptive. Sadly, his search for relief ended in tragedy. Mark's snoring had become a significant issue following a car accident that left him with ongoing sinus problems. While many people experience occasional snoring, Mark's case was severe. It affected his sleep, disrupted those around him, and became a source of tension in his daily life. His girlfriend, Tracy Lambert, and his family often joked about it, but Mark knew it was a problem that needed a solution. After consulting with a doctor, Mark received disheartening news. His snoring was due to chronic sinus issues, and there wasn't much that could be done medically. This left him frustrated and searching for alternative ways to manage the condition. Determined to find relief, he discussed the issue with Tracy. Together, they came up with an unusual idea. They decided to try using tampons to block his nose, thinking it might muffle the sound and provide some peace during the night. That evening, after having some wine and taking sleeping pills, Mark tried their unconventional solution. He inserted tampons into his nostrils and settled on the sofa at Tracy's home in Haslemere, Surrey. The couple joked about how this odd remedy might finally solve the problem. Later, Tracy went upstairs to bed, leaving Mark asleep on the couch. When Tracy came downstairs the next morning, she made a heartbreaking discovery. Mark was unresponsive. Despite her efforts to get help, it was too late. Mark had passed away during the night. An investigation revealed that Mark had suffocated. The tampons blocked his airway, and the sleeping pills he had taken reduced his ability to wake up or respond to breathing difficulties. Pathologist Dr. Peter Jackson confirmed that the combination of the blockage and sedatives was the cause of his death. The coroner officially ruled the incident as an accident. Mark's family and loved ones were devastated. His mother, Vera Gleason, shared that while they often joked about his snoring, they hadn't realized how much it truly affected him. She explained that Mark had been dealing with sinus issues since his accident and had tried hard to manage the condition. His snoring had been a constant frustration, and his attempt to find relief tragically backfired. Tracy, who had been living with Mark at the time, was deeply affected by the incident. She admitted that they had both believed the idea was worth trying out of desperation. While it seemed harmless in the moment, it led to a devastating outcome neither of them could have foreseen. Following the inquest, Tracy's father, Jeffrey Morgan Burns, publicly stated that Tracy shouldn't feel responsible for what happened. The coroner's ruling confirmed that it was an accidental death, with no indication of negligence or ill intent. Still, the loss of Mark was an unimaginable burden for everyone involved. Mark's death shows how important it is to seek professional guidance for medical issues. Snoring, while disruptive, is not life-threatening, and there are safer ways to address it, from lifestyle adjustments to medical treatments. Mark's snoring was tied to his sinus problems, which might have been treated more effectively if he had pursued further medical advice instead of turning to an untested solution. This tragedy left Mark's family and friends with lingering questions about how such an unconventional idea could lead to such a heartbreaking result. What started as a hopeful attempt to ease a nightly problem ended with the loss of a young man's life. Mark's story is a reminder to approach health concerns with caution and seek reliable methods, no matter how challenging the situation may seem. While his intentions were simply to find peace for himself and those around him, the path he chose had unforeseen and devastating consequences. It was Saturday evening, October 2018, in Halle, a city in eastern Germany. The Südstadt railway station, a normally routine spot for travelers, would soon become the center of a tragic event. Around 10 p.m., a 19-year-old man lost his life in a failed attempt to steal money from a ticket machine. What was supposed to be a quick crime ended in devastation. The young man, a resident, had been involved in minor crimes before. That evening, he teamed up with a 15-year-old boy and a 20-year-old man. They planned to break open the ticket machine at the station and steal the cash inside. To do this, They used a mixture of petrol and other flammable materials to create an explosion. However, the blast was far more powerful than they anticipated. The explosion destroyed the machine and sent the 19-year-old flying about 10 feet away. A train driver arriving at the station discovered him lying unconscious and badly injured. The force of the explosion was so intense that the front panel of the ticket machine was thrown across the platform. Despite being rushed to the hospital, the young man succumbed to his injuries about 90 minutes later, never regaining consciousness. The two other individuals, instead of helping their friend, fled the scene immediately. They left him behind in a critical state, likely out of fear or panic. Their departure only added to the tragic nature of the incident. Police arrived quickly and launched an investigation. The Silliest station was closed for several hours as authorities examined the scene. By early Sunday morning, a tip from two young girls led police to the suspects. The 20-year-old and the 15-year-old were arrested at a nearby home and taken into custody for questioning. Further investigation revealed that the trio might have been behind a series of similar attacks in the city. In the weeks leading up to the incident, several other ticket machines and even an automated teller machine had been destroyed in explosions. Police linked them to at least 6 such incidents. In one case, a cash box from a ticket machine had been stolen, and this was later recovered during the arrests. This was not the first time such a crime had ended tragically. A year earlier, a man in Dortmund died in a similar attempt to blow open a ticket machine. These incidents highlighted the dangerous and reckless nature of such crimes. The 19-year-old's death deeply affected the community in Halle. His family and friends were left grieving, struggling to understand how something so senseless could happen. The loss was a reminder of the unpredictable dangers of risky criminal behavior. For the two surviving accomplices, the consequences were severe. Both faced charges related to the incident, and their lives were forever changed. The emotional weight of their involvement in the death of their friend would likely stay with them for years. The Silliest station, now a crime scene, remained closed for hours, disrupting train services. The aftermath of the explosion, including the damage to property and the tragic loss of life, is a grim reality of the risks associated with such reckless actions. As investigations continued, authorities sought to uncover the full extent of the trio's involvement in other crimes. Their arrest marked the beginning of a lengthy legal process, but for the 19-year-old and his loved ones, the outcome of that process would not undo the tragedy. It was July 4, 2015 in Calais, Maine, near the Canadian border. Devin Staples, a 22-year-old from Orlando, Florida, celebrated Independence Day with friends and family. Devin, who had worked as characters like Gaston and Goofy at Disney World, was known for his fun-loving personality. The usual fireworks, laughter, and drinks festered that evening. Devin, known for his sense of humor, played around with a fireworks mortar tube, unaware that a tragic mistake was about to happen. The group was lighting fireworks throughout the night. At some point, Devin picked up the fireworks mortar tube and placed it on his head. His friends, thinking he was joking, tried to convince him to stop. Within seconds, Devin lit the firework, which exploded instantly, killing him. His brother Cody was nearby and described the scene as devastating, noting that nothing could be done to save Devin. The news of Devin's death shocked everyone who knew him. His family emphasized that Devin wasn't reckless. His brother mentioned that Devin often pretended to do silly things for laughs but never intended to hurt himself. This time, however, a joke turned into a deadly accident. Devin's mother, Kathleen Staples, believes Devin thought the firework was inactive. She told CBS News that Devin assumed it didn't work and placed it on his head as part of his playful nature. But once the fuse ignited, there was no time to react. His fiancée, Cara Hawley, who was present that night, explained that Devin was likely buzzed from alcohol and might have accidentally lit the firework. She recalled yelling at Devin when she saw the fuse was lit, but it was too late. The firework was a reloadable mortar tube meant to explode into the sky. Its exact type is unknown, but its power was strong enough to kill Devin immediately. His death shows the dangers associated with fireworks, which cause many injuries and fatalities, especially around holidays like the 4th of July. Psychologists suggest that young adults like Devin are more prone to risky behavior due to peer pressure and the desire to impress others. Dr. Art Markman from the University of Texas, Austin, explained that the brain's frontal lobes, responsible for controlling impulses, fully develop in the mid-20s, making young adults more likely to take risks. Devin's history as a fun-loving entertainer might have contributed to his decision to place the fireworks on his head. Alcohol likely contributed to Devin's poor decision-making that night. It impairs judgment, making it harder to recognize danger. Devin might not have realized the risk of putting a live firework on his head, believing it was a harmless prank. After Devin's tragic death, his mother began advocating for stricter fireworks regulations in Maine. The state had only legalized fireworks in 2012 after a 60-year ban. Devin's death was the first fatality since fireworks became legal. Kathleen argued that fireworks should be regulated similarly to firearms or vehicles, emphasizing their potential danger. State Representative Michel Lajoie echoed her concerns, suggesting stricter rules for fireworks use, though he acknowledged that it's hard to prevent every accident. Devin's family and friends remember him as a kind, energetic person who loved to make others smile. He had planned to become a veterinary technician and start classes later that year. His love for animals and his joyful spirit are how his loved ones want him to be remembered. To honor his memory, his brother Cody encouraged people to do something nice for someone and show love in his name. July 9, 1993, in Toronto, Canada, Gary Hoy, a 38-year-old lawyer, was preparing for a special event. His law firm, Holden Day Wilson, was hosting a reception for students interested in internships. The gathering took place on the 24th floor of the Toronto Dominion Bank Tower, a high-rise in the city's financial district. Gary, a respected corporate lawyer, was excited to meet the students and give them a tour of the office. However, what started as a normal day became a tragedy that would be remembered for years. Gary wasn't just known for his legal expertise. He had a reputation for an unusual stunt. He would run into the office windows to show their strength, bouncing off to prove they wouldn't break. Over the years, Gary had done this countless times without any issues. His colleagues and visitors often found it amusing, and Gary took pride in pulling off the demonstration. That day, Gary decided to show the trick again to the students. Confident as always, he threw himself at the window, and just like before, the glass held and he bounced back. But for reasons unknown, Gary wasn't satisfied and decided to do it again. This time, things went wrong. Instead of bouncing off like before, the window gave way. It didn't shatter, but it popped out of its frame, sending Gary falling 24 stories to his death in the courtyard below. He died instantly from the impact. The students and colleagues who witnessed the accident were shocked. What was supposed to be a simple demonstration had turned into a fatal accident in a matter of seconds. Emergency services arrived quickly, but they could do nothing to save Gary. His death left everyone in disbelief. Authorities and engineers were called to investigate. The glass itself hadn't broken. It had simply come out of its frame. Structural engineer Bob Greer later explained that no window frame could withstand the repeated force of a grown man throwing himself against it. While the glass held, the frame failed, leading to the tragic fall. News of Gary's death spread quickly throughout the city. People couldn't comprehend how such a thing could happen. Gary wasn't reckless or trying to harm himself. He repeated something he had done many times before. Yet this time it led to his untimely death. Gary's colleagues were devastated. Hugh Kelly, another lawyer at the firm, described Gary as a brilliant lawyer and a kind person who would be deeply missed. The tragedy shook the firm, once one of the most prestigious in Canada. A crisis team was brought in to help employees cope, but the emotional toll remained evident. In the years following Gary's death, the firm began to decline. Many believed the trauma of losing Gary contributed to Holden Day Wilson's eventual downfall. By 1996, the firm had closed its doors, marking one of the biggest law firm failures in Canadian history. Gary's death became part of Toronto's history. It was so unusual that many people thought it was just an urban legend, but the facts were clear. His story was featured in media, including the film The Darwin Awards, the show 1,000 Ways to Die, and an episode of Mythbusters. Online forums even debated the event, with some questioning whether it was real. But there was no denying the truth. A man lost his life in a bizarre, tragic accident. It was January 2, 2001, in Budapest, Hungary. Jimmy Zombo, a 42-year-old pop star, spent the evening at home with his wife and friends, drinking and enjoying their company. Zombo, widely known as the King, had become a legend in Hungary. His career was thriving, with millions of records sold, and his recent album, Christmas with Jimmy, was topping the charts. He seemed to have it all. That night, he was peaceful until early morning when Zombo became annoyed by a neighbor's rooster disturbing his sleep. Frustrated, he decided to scare it off with his 9mm Beretta. As an experienced gun owner and hunter, he didn't think twice. He fired 2 shots from a window and the noise quieted the rooster. Relieved, he returned inside, confident the matter was resolved. Zombo removed the magazine and prepared to show it was empty to reassure his wife that the gun was safe. However, he missed a critical detail. A bullet was still in the chamber. In a moment of carelessness, Zombo raised the gun to his head and pulled the trigger. The gun went off, and the bullet struck him in the temple. Panic ensued as his wife and friends rushed to help him. They called for an ambulance, and he was taken to the hospital in critical condition. Sadly, despite efforts to save him, Jimmy Zombo was pronounced dead hours later. News of his sudden death spread quickly, leaving fans and the country in shock. At first, rumors of taking his own life circulated, but a police investigation confirmed it was a tragic accident. Zombo, slightly intoxicated but not heavily drunk, had misjudged the situation, leading to the fatal shooting. For Hungary, the loss of Jimmy Zombo was hard to process. Born in 1958 as Imre Zombo, he had worked his way up from humble beginnings, starting in the state radio children's choir. After performing in the United States, he returned to Hungary in the 1980s, where his career took off. His albums went platinum, and he was even named Hungary's Singer of the Year in 1993. By his death, he hosted a popular TV show and had secured his place as the face of Hungarian pop music. As the details of his death became public, grief spread across the country. Fans gathered outside his home, lighting candles and laying flowers. Many were visibly heartbroken, mourning the man who had brought so much joy to their lives. His house became a shrine, with people leaving tributes in his memory. On January 5th, just days after his death, Zombo's body was laid out for public viewing at a Greek Catholic church on Sheppel Island. Over 30,000 people came to pay their respects. The next day, tens of thousands more lined the streets for his funeral. It was a grand, emotional event unlike anything Hungary had ever seen. Black horses drew his coffin, and mourners watched in disbelief as the procession passed by. The Mass, broadcast live on TV, showed Zombo's family flanked by 30 bodyguards, helping them through the massive crowd. Thousands of doves were released during the ceremony as his coffin was lowered into the ground. A crown was placed on a red cushion next to him, a final tribute to the man known as the King. Fans, some having traveled hundreds of kilometers, stood by, overwhelmed with grief. His death left a significant void in Hungarian pop culture that would be difficult to fill. Jimmy Zombo's life resonated with many, especially those who had lived through tough times in Hungary during the 1990s. His music provided comfort, joy, and a sense of unity. Even after his death, Zombo's legacy continues. His home remains a place of pilgrimage, and fellow musicians have recorded tribute songs in his honor. His albums still sell, and his influence on Hungarian pop culture remains strong. Jimmy Zombo was more than just a singer. To his fans, he symbolized hope, joy, and connection. Darren Hickey was a 51-year-old wedding planner from Bolton, England, who had overcome significant challenges in his life. 7 years before, he had endured a severe stroke that impacted his ability to move and speak. Despite these difficulties, Darren found a new purpose in dedicating himself to charity work, for which he was honored with a Courage Award by the Stroke Association. And when things seemed all chill, everything went south. On a regular workday, April 4, 2019, around 4 p.m., Darren was at a wedding venue when a chef offered him a small fish cake to simply taste. Sadly, the fish cake was extremely hot and burned the back of his throat. As the afternoon progressed, the pain became even worse, prompting Darren to seek help at the urgent care ward at Chorley Hospital, Lancashire. The medical staff treated him with painkillers and advised him to return if his condition worsened. Darren then went home to rest. However, the situation got even worse later that evening. Around 9 p.m., Darren's partner, Neil Parkinson, discovered him choking in their room. In a desperate attempt to help, Neil tried to thump Darren's back, hoping to clear whatever obstructed his breathing. Despite his efforts, Darren tragically fell on the floor. Neil Parkinson immediately called for help, and the paramedics quickly arrived at the scene, providing urgent treatment and transporting Darren to the Royal Bolton Hospital. Despite their efforts, Darren was tragically pronounced dead just after midnight. Shockingly, all of this occurred less than 12 hours after he had tasted the fish cake that caused such severe burns in his throat. The swelling in Darren's throat, specifically around his voice box, worsened progressively over the hours following the incident, eventually leading to his inability to breathe. An investigation into Darren's sudden and unusual death revealed that the internal damage to his throat was so deep that it required specialist equipment to be seen, showing just how severely burned his throat was. During the investigation, pathologist Dr. Patrick Waugh, who carried out the post-mortem examination, said that such extreme symptoms were typically observed in victims of house fires who had inhaled hot smoke. He pointed out that encountering such a severe reaction from eating hot food is not an everyday circumstance. Initially, Darren Hickey seemed to be coping well after the incident with the hot fish cake. Still, the swelling in his throat quickly worsened, leading to severe complications. The coroner raised concerns about the level of care provided at the hospital's urgent care ward, which GTD Healthcare operates. This facility is designed to alleviate the pressure on traditional accident and emergency departments. A practitioner had reached out to a specialist at the ear, nose, and throat unit at Preston Hospital, hoping to get a clearer understanding of Darren's injuries. However, the lack of visible burns on Mr. Hickey's mouth and tongue made it difficult to identify the extent of the damage initially. Ultimately, Darren's death was ruled as accidental and caused by asphyxiation. The investigation highlighted the need for heightened awareness and possibly revised protocols to handle such unusual but severe reactions. Elaine Hertzberg, a 49-year-old woman, was crossing a 4-lane road with her bicycle in Tempe, Arizona, when the unthinkable happened. On the evening of March 18, 2018, around 9:58 p.m., Elaine was crossing the street when an Uber test vehicle, which was operating independently in autonomous mode, clashed with her. Sadly, she died from the clash immediately. Countless and lengthy investigations were carried out to understand what went wrong. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, together with local police, searched for details of the crash that occurred on that fateful evening, and all their findings pointed to human error as the primary cause. A certain Rafaela Vasquez was in the driver's seat and was supposed to watch the vehicle as a human safety driver. However, investigations later revealed that Vasquez was not paying full attention to the road at the time of the accident. Dashcam footage released by the police revealed that Vasquez was not looking at the road in the crucial moments leading up to the collision. The video showed her looking down for several seconds while the car was traveling at a speed of 39 miles per hour, or 63 kilometers per hour. She had been streaming an episode of the television show The Voice. Despite this, Vasquez pleaded not guilty to any charges related to the accident and was released to await trial. Further complicating the situation, records from the streaming service, Hulu, indicated that Vasquez's device had been streaming that particular show at the time of the crash. Additionally, the autonomous vehicle itself had shortcomings. Its automatic systems failed to recognize Elaine and her bicycle as a potential threat that could lead to a collision, and that was itself a critical malfunction in a technology designed to prevent such incidents. Adding to the concerns, just days before the accident, an employee had already raised issues with the vehicle's safety to the company's leaders. The employee expressed worries that the vehicles were frequently involved in accidents and questioned whether the operators, like Vasquez, were adequately trained to handle these advanced systems. These warnings, however, did not lead to any immediate action, and sadly, the fatal crash occurred, raising serious questions about the overall safety and reliability of autonomous vehicles. The police report issued in June 2018 concluded that the fatal collision could have been entirely avoided if Vasquez had been monitoring the road. This incident has sparked discussions about the safety protocols for autonomous vehicles and the crucial role that human operators play in ensuring these technologies do not pose a risk to public safety. After the incident, The state of Arizona took decisive action by suspending Uber's ability to test self-driving cars on its public roads. This move reflected growing concerns about the safety of autonomous vehicles. In response to the suspension and ongoing safety concerns, Uber ended all its autonomous vehicle tests in Arizona. However, Uber later managed to regain permission to conduct these tests in California, starting earlier in 2020, signaling a cautious continuation of their development of this technology. In July 2023, Rafaela Vasquez pleaded guilty to endangerment. This plea was a key moment in history, as it was the first time a clash involving a fully autonomous car resulted in a criminal conviction. Rafaela initially told police that she hadn't seen Elaine before the clash, claiming that Elaine came out of nowhere on a dark street in Tempe. Initially charged with negligent homicide, Rafaela eventually reached a plea agreement with prosecutors. The judge overseeing the case accepted Rafaela's plea and sentenced her to 3 years of supervised probation. June 30, 2002, in Hawaii, Daniel Dick, an 18-year-old from Silmar, California, was enjoying a family vacation to celebrate his high school graduation. A dedicated and cheerful student, Daniel had been the student body president at First Lutheran High School in Los Angeles and was known for his sense of humor and positive outlook. He was set to attend California State University Northridge in the fall and worked at a supermarket, where he was admired for his speed and work ethic. But this trip to Hawaii turned out to be his last. That afternoon, Daniel visited Sandy Beach on Oahu's southern coast, a favorite among tourists. There he met 3 young women who were also visiting. The group decided to take a short trip to the Halona Blowhole, a natural rock formation where ocean water shoots through a hole in the rocks, creating a dramatic geyser-like spray. While beautiful, the site is notoriously dangerous, with warning signs clearly stating the risks. Around 3 p.m., the group arrived at the blowhole. Despite barriers and signs reading "hazardous conditions do not go beyond this point," Daniel chose to step past the restrictions. Witnesses later reported that he appeared excited to feel the ocean spray and was laughing as he moved closer to the blowhole. Nearby onlookers tried to warn him about the danger, but he continued, confident and unaware of the risk he was taking. As he stood near the edge, a sudden and powerful wave crashed against the rocks. The surge of water propelled Daniel into the air and down into the blowhole. It happened so quickly that no one had time to react. Horrified witnesses saw him disappear, and some ran to call for emergency help. The Honolulu Fire Department quickly arrived, but the situation was extremely difficult. The blowhole's structure made rescue efforts dangerous, with sharp rocks and unpredictable water surges complicating the search. Divers and rescue teams scoured the area from the ground, water, and air, but as night fell, they found no trace of Daniel. The search was suspended at 8 p.m., leaving his devastated family, who had been at the scene, to spend a sleepless night hoping for a miracle. At 5:30 a.m. the next day, the search resumed. Rescue teams returned with helicopters and divers combing the area. The seas were rough and progress was slow. Around 10:15 a.m., after hours of searching, Daniel's body was found just 20 feet from the blowhole. It appeared the wave had pulled him under the rock formation, where he became trapped until the tide receded. The discovery was a heartbreaking moment for his family, who had been waiting anxiously. His mother and 2 younger brothers were present, overcome with grief. Daniel's passing was not the first at the Halona Blowhole. Since 1927, it has claimed several lives. In 1986, an 18-year-old named Tracy Rodriguez fell into the blowhole, and in 1969, 26-year-old Robert Barry Lee died while trying to warn someone of the danger. Despite warning signs and barriers, the natural beauty of the site often tempted visitors to ignore safety measures. Honolulu Fire Captain Richard Sue emphasized the unpredictability of the ocean and how visitors unfamiliar with its dangers often misjudged its power. The blowhole's reputation as a beautiful but dangerous spot continued to attract risk-takers despite its history of accidents. Daniel's death left a deep impact on those who knew him. At school, he was remembered as a bright and kind-hearted young man who always tried to make others laugh. His teacher, Susie Underwood, described him as someone who brought joy to everyone around him. His classmates and friends mourned the loss of a person who had such a positive influence. In the aftermath, Daniel's family returned to California to make funeral arrangements. His mother, though heartbroken, expressed gratitude to the rescue teams for recovering his body. The family held a private service at their church to remember Daniel and celebrate his life. The tragedy also sparked discussions about safety at the Halona Blowhole. While there were already barriers and warning signs in place, Some argued that more could be done to prevent such incidents. Others pointed out that no amount of precaution could fully stop individuals from making risky decisions. Daniel's story remains a heartbreaking reminder of the dangers of underestimating nature. For his family and friends, his memory lives on as a symbol of his vibrant spirit and the joy he brought to those around him. In 2010, Forrest Fenn, a millionaire art dealer from Santa Fe, New Mexico, launched a treasure hunt that captured global attention. Fenn claimed to have hidden a chest filled with gold, jewels, and artifacts worth over $2 million somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. To guide seekers, he published a memoir, The Thrill of the Chase, which included a cryptic poem with 9 clues leading to the treasure. While the hunt inspired thousands, it also led to tragic outcomes. Among the treasure hunters was 58-year-old Michael Sexton from Deer Park, Colorado. Fascinated by the mystery, Michael became convinced he had deciphered the poem's clues. In February 2020, he and a 65-year-old friend decided to search for the treasure in Dinosaur National Monument, a remote and challenging area spanning Colorado and Utah. The region is notorious for its rugged terrain and harsh winter conditions. The pair embarked on their first expedition with minimal supplies: a few bottles of water, candy bars, and Fenn's book. They rented snowmobiles to navigate the terrain but soon encountered deep snow, forcing them to abandon their vehicles. Attempting to continue on foot, they became disoriented in the wilderness. Hypothermic and exhausted, they called for help. Search and rescue teams located them in time and brought them to safety. Despite their near-death experience, Michael was undeterred and began planning another trip. Just a month later, on March 17, 2020, Michael and the same companion returned to Dinosaur National Monument. Once again, they rented snowmobiles, but their preparations were inadequate. They carried only a few candy bars, bottles of water, and the same book. Dressed in light jackets and jeans, they were ill-equipped for the freezing temperatures. As before, the snowmobiles were abandoned due to poor conditions, forcing them to continue on foot. Days passed without any contact from the pair, prompting the snowmobile rental shop to alert authorities when the men failed to return the equipment. Search efforts began on March 20th, and rescuers soon identified the men as the same duo rescued in February. After locating their abandoned vehicles and snowmobiles, searchers found the men on March 21st, about a mile from their February rescue site. Tragically, Michael did not survive. His companion, severely weakened by exposure, was found alive and airlifted to safety. However, he has remained silent about the events leading to Michael's death. Michael's passing marked the 5th known fatality linked to Fenn's treasure hunt. Since its announcement, the hunt attracted people worldwide, each dreaming of unearthing the hidden fortune. However, the risks proved fatal for several. In 2017, New Mexico pastor Paris Wallace lost his life during his search. Authorities in New Mexico urged Fenn to end the hunt, but he refused, emphasizing that participants were responsible for their safety. Following Michael's death, Forrest Fenn expressed sorrow for the loss, calling it a tragedy. He urged treasure hunters to avoid searching during dangerous winter months. Despite the dangers, the hunt continued to attract adventurers eager to solve the cryptic poem. Phrases like "Warm Waters Halt," "The Blaze," and "Home of Brown" fueled countless theories, but the clues left many frustrated and lost. Critics questioned the hunt's legitimacy, with some doubting the treasure's existence due to the lack of concrete evidence. Fenn, however, maintained that the treasure was real and waited to be found. In June 2020, Fenn announced that the treasure had finally been discovered. Jack Stueff, a 32-year-old medical student from Michigan, located the chest in Wyoming. However, the exact location remained undisclosed to preserve the site's natural beauty and prevent it from becoming a tourist hotspot. Stueff honored Fenn's wishes by keeping the spot secret. While the discovery brought closure to some, it couldn't undo the loss felt by families of those who died searching for the treasure. For Michael and others, the ultimate cost of the pursuit was devastatingly clear. The question lingers: was the treasure worth the lives it claimed? May 12, 2022, in Mallorca, Spain, when a former Dutch footballer, Murad Lamrabat, tragically lost his life. The 31-year-old, who once played for Vitesse Arnhem, was on a family vacation with his wife and 2 children. What began as a joyful getaway turned devastating when a daring stunt went fatally wrong. Murad was a passionate athlete who loved adventure. After leaving his football career, he pursued kickboxing, but his appetite for thrilling experiences never waned. On this particular day, he decided to attempt tombstoning, a daring activity where participants leap from cliffs into the ocean below. The family had rented a boat and sailed to the Malgratz Islands, a beautiful spot with cliffs towering about 30 meters, or nearly 100 feet. Lamrabat saw this as the perfect place to try the jump, unaware of the dangers it posed. To land safely in the water, he needed to leap horizontally for at least 10 meters to avoid jagged rocks below. Unfortunately, his calculations were off. From the top of the cliff, Lamrabat shouted before making the jump while his wife filmed from the boat. The video captured the terrifying moment as he misjudged the leap. Instead of landing in the clear waters, he struck the rocks below with immense force. The impact was catastrophic. He hit the rocks at an estimated speed of 88 kilometers per hour, or 55 miles per hour, resulting in severe injuries. Witnesses described the horrifying moment as his wife's voice, filled with shock and fear, cried out. Despite the violent fall, his injuries were not immediately fatal. An autopsy revealed that he lost consciousness upon impact and drowned soon after when he fell into the water. His body was recovered later that day by police divers and coast guards after an extensive search. Lamrabat's death showed the inherent risks of extreme sports. Even as a former professional athlete with remarkable physical skills, he couldn't overcome the dangers of such stunts. His past with Vitesse Arnhem was marked with pride. He played for their U23 team and even scored in a first-team exhibition game in 2010. But no level of fitness or athletic ability could have saved him from the simple laws of physics that day. The tragedy left his family in deep shock. His wife, who witnessed the incident while filming, was unable to speak to the police immediately due to her emotional state. Their children, too young to fully comprehend the loss, were present on the boat during the heartbreaking moment. Vitesse Arnhem later released a statement expressing their condolences, honoring Murad's contributions to the team, and sending support to his grieving family. The recorded footage of the jump added another layer of tragedy to the story. In an era where people document and share their lives online, Lamrabat may have attempted the stunt for an audience. The video, which captured his final moments, circulated widely on social media, becoming a grim reminder of the risks involved in thrill-seeking activities. Tombstoning, while appealing to adrenaline junkies, is notorious for its dangers. The activity requires precise judgment of both height and distance, as even slight miscalculations can have dire consequences. Over the years, numerous fatalities have been linked to this extreme sport. Murad Lamrabat's story is a heartbreaking example of how thrill-seeking adventures can quickly turn fatal. While these stunts may seem exciting, they come with serious risks that should not be underestimated. For his family and those who knew him, Murad's passing is a profound loss.